Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Trees. The silent giants are often overlooked in our daily lives, but do they have hidden powers, perhaps magical abilities or dormant potential that we really should be considering? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the Voice of Canada Broadcast Network, www.vocbn.ca. With us this hour to explore the healing properties of nature is Dee Davidson. Ellen lives in the redwoods of Northern California, where she's fallen in love with the trees. It began when the old growth redwood behind her house visited her in reoccurring dreams. Then she felt called to spend time hiking and meditating in the ancient forests. Over the next 17 years, the trees healed Ellen from fibromyalgia, insomnia, and chronic fatigue, as well as opening her perception, creativity, and imagination in unexpected ways. Ellen has worked as a creative writing, piano, elementary school teacher, and author. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Thank you for having me.
It's just a wonderful, wonderful topic to be talking about today, the trees and nature. Your bio states that the old growth redwood behind your house visited you in reoccurring dreams. Please tell us a little bit about those and what you concluded from them.
It was 32 years ago, and I had first moved into this house. There's a giant old growth redwood in my backyard, and those trees can be up to 2 or 3,000 years old.
Mm.
I don't know exactly how old that one is, but it's big. And I started dreaming every night about that tree, and it would teach me things in the dreams, like what its energetic radius was. It would show me mushrooms and fungi. And this is way before all the information about the importance of the mycelial networks became public knowledge. But that was long before I thought it was remotely possible that a tree might communicate with us. And so I was into dreams, and I wrote them down in my journal, and I analyzed them from a Jungian perspective as if the tree was part of me. And now I don't know. I think it might have been the tree visiting.
That's pretty amazing. So, how long do those dreams last?
They still happen every once in a while, but for 2 years, when I first moved into this house, I would have 3 a week. Really vivid dreams.
Goodness, goodness. So,
Yeah.
what led you to the conclusion that trees are sentient?
Well, it was actually fairly recently when some of the science came out with Suzanne Simard and the mother tree, and there's so much information now that trees actually communicate with each other. Institute of Heart Math is doing a tree human connectivity study about how trees respond to our emotions, and my own personal experience with the trees. There were some wild things that happened that were inexplicable, and so I started to wonder.
Well, share with us some of those wild, inexplicable things.
Well, one that's really easy to explain is one time I would sit for a couple hours. I'd hike for maybe 4 miles and then sit with the trees, and I had been sitting for a long time, and I started smelling a little bit of smoke, and there weren't any fires here in Northern California, and I thought, "That's strange. I wonder what I'm smelling." And into my head suddenly came this information that I was smelling smoke from fires in Siberia. And I thought, I don't know if there's any fires in Siberia. I ran home, Googled, and sure enough, there were fires in Siberia, and the smoke from them was reaching all the way to the Pacific Northwest. And I'm not sure if it was the tree aware of that and telling me, or if it somehow connected me to the collective intelligence, but I couldn't believe it. It was so beyond my wildest expectations. And that's one
Well,
example.
well, if they said that the smoke and whatnot was passing, clear to your area, couldn't you just been smelling the fire?
Yeah, I was smelling the smoke, the actual smoke, but it was making its way. There weren't any local fires. It was
Right.
making its way
Hmm.
all the way from Siberia to here.
Right. So instead of it being something, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
instead of it being something esoteric, couldn't it have simply been the smoke was making it to you and you were smelling it?
Oh, absolutely. That was what was happening. The part that was so esoteric was the information that the smoke was from Siberia, which at that point in time I had absolutely no way of knowing.
So, how does one meditate with trees?
They are a great natural assistance to a more profound state of meditation. Buddha was enlightened after 49 days sitting in the underneath the Bodhi tree, and I never really considered that the tree had a big part in that, but now I think it did. Trees put out a bioelectric field, and that field is really soothing to the human nervous system and sort of helps us naturally regulate our nervous systems. And when we're in a calm, receptive state, we go into deeper states of meditation.
So the magnetic or whatever you called it, is that the same as the field that's put out by our human hearts and creating our auric field?
It's the bioelectric field, and trees have it, and we have it. And human beings, for the most part, evolved with trees. Our systems are really compatible. The trees calm us down and bring us into coherence.
They're so they're so amazing. What about the ability that they have to exhale what we need to inhale as we inhale what and we exhale what they need. So they put out the
Yes,
oxygen and we put out the carbon dioxide.
I know. We've just evolved in this beautiful relationship with trees, and that's another meditation factor is just simply breathing in the presence of a tree. Actually, they've discovered that trees have a pulse. It's from dendritic pumping, the way they pump the fluids from their roots up to their leaves, and it has a very slow pulse. And that also helps our own heartbeats slow down and come into a rhythm, not as slow as that of the trees, which is very slow. But there's a lot of relationships between ourselves and trees that are just being discovered by scientists.
Well, how does that pumping work? They don't have hearts, do they?
No, they don't have hearts. They have a circulatory system, and it works through the way the needles and leaves, the stomata, open and close, and somehow that draws the water up. And but if
And
you've ever looked at the vascular network of a redwood tree, for example, some of them have been burned or opened up so that we can see it's extensive.
it would have to be to support all that mass, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you discover by meditating with trees?
Well, uh, it's different. The quality of my thoughts and ideas and imagination changes. And it took me actually years to figure that out because it's subtle. But I now know Osprey Oriole Lake wrote a beautiful book, The Story is in Our Bones. And in it, she talks about how most civilizations, including Western civilizations, used to make decisions out underneath what are known as council trees. And I now think that the kinds of ideas people would come up with under a tree would be inherently different than the ones in a building. I know my imagination takes off. I get ideas for stories, and I'm just in a state of deeper peace, more receptivity.
Do you think that there's something about the field of the tree when you're sitting in it that encourages us to go from beta brain waves to alpha and even omega?
Absolutely. And the amazing thing about it is it's pretty effortless. We don't have to do a lot, just being in the presence of the tree. I used to joke with my friend for a while, we were meditating with a Vajrayana Lama that was a master at Dzogchen, and, I used to joke that being in the presence of the trees and meditating felt the same. It was like being with a guru because
Well,
there's that field that they put out that makes it easier to get into a deep state of consciousness for
yeah.
normal people like me that aren't particularly skilled at it.
Well, throughout the ages, there's been different modalities from shamanism and the journey trance to it just goes on, where people intentionally try to get in that state to be enlightened or to get information. And how amazing that the trees offer that.
Mhm.
So the council tree, tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's just this idea that these old trees were part of the community and people would gather around them when big decisions needed to be made. And now I think the intelligence of nature would influence the decision. And I know there's an old classic, The Secret Life of Plants, about how when someone comes toward a plant with the intent of harming it or cutting it, the plant puts out an electronic scream. So the plants and trees are more aware of us than we realize. And we're just trying to research that now.
Is there quite a bit of research going on?
Well, HeartMath is doing some, and there's more research with the intelligence of trees with each other. Suzanne Simard showed that when Douglas fir is attacked by bark beetles, then it puts out chemical signals, aerosols, that alert the nearby trees, and they all they tighten their bark so that the beetles can't get in. So there's tremendous intelligence. As far HeartMath is doing studies about the relationship between human emotions and trees and their response. I don't know of too many other studies about that yet.
We'll leave it to heart math to be leading the way, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they work so much with the energetic field around things and how there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there that we've been heretofore kind of unaware of. So, yeah, pretty
Definitely.
fascinating. Yeah. Well, it's time for us to take a station break. Ellen and I will return very shortly, so please don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. We'll catch you on the other side of this break. What is forest bathing?
I had no idea.
With us this hour discussing communing with nature is Ellen D. Davidson, the author of Sacred Forest Bathing. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. So there is the question. What is forest bathing?
I had no idea when I started practicing it. It uh, it's a term that was first invented by the Japanese. They call it Shinrin-yoku, and they've done studies now for about 30 years on the benefits. What it basically entails is immersing oneself in a forest a and practicing mindfulness techniques at the same time.
That's interesting. So we're talking about the forest now instead of just, you can't see the forest through the trees, right?
Right.
Just instead of just the trees, you're talking about the whole forest. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. There's an atmosphere in an unspoiled, intact forest that we humans can feel. when we walk in there. There's a deep hush. And I recently found out from Diana Beresford Kroger's book, Our Green Heart, that the hush has scientific reasons in that the lichen, the moss, and substances like suberin found in the bark actually muffle sound. So when we walk into a forest, we're walking into a place that feels quiet and peaceful, punctuated with sweet songs of birds and splashes of creeks.
What about the smells that are around you?
Oh,
I kind
absolutely.
of wonder if we haven't had to do aromatherapy to compensate for the fact that none of us are around it anymore.
Actually, that's something I think about a lot because when we are in unspoiled nature, we're getting sound therapy, aromatherapy, uh, all kinds of things. There are all sorts of beautiful smells in the forest, and perhaps I want to mention the aerosols, phytoncides that the trees put out to ward themselves from pests like insects, happen to also be fabulous for us. They not only smell really good, fresh and clean, but they boost our immune systems, especially the T cells that fight cancer and colds. And the Japanese in their studies have found one forest bathing trip for 2 or 3 hours minimum. The beneficial effects last for 30 days.
Well, it sounds like time to do a regular field trip, right?
Right? And, most people can get to a park or it's not just forests. There have been studies about blue spaces, lakes, rivers, oceans also do it. I suspect any wild natural environment is deeply healing for us, from deserts to prairies to mountains. And uh, uh, basically, we're just wired to have contact with nature. It's how we all evolved.
Well, exactly. We certainly have separated ourselves from it, though, haven't we? What are the results of this separation? What are people seeing that not being exposed to these elements is causing in us?
Well, there's so many articles now about this epidemic of loneliness we have, which is partly because of our disconnection from the natural world and the wildlife. It's comforting to see other creatures alive and well. And being on screens too much, everybody's probably read about how challenging that is for our nervous systems and especially for children and young people. So, nature's an antidote to the fact that we're just bombarded with all these electronic signals that are disruptive. And not only to our nervous systems, but to our hormonal systems and other other aspects of our beings.
So we're sitting in a house. Say we're out in the middle of nowhere, but we're sitting in a house and we have 5G going, okay, and all sorts of electronics within the house. Does that actually field or interfere with the more beneficial frequency of the trees?
I don't have proof. I'm not a scientist, but it feels like it does to me when I camp and I'm outside, out of range, completely out of range. There is something in me that just calms down. I sleep better, I feel more peaceful, and it feels like a break from a lot of information. Our bodies pick up trillions of bits of information every second compared to maybe 11 that make it to our conscious awareness. And because there's such a gap between what our bodies are swimming in, literally, and picking up and processing, they're really working. Our bodies are working really hard. So being in nature is simpler. We're not so bombarded.
When we're in nature, do we start to form a resonance on a lot of other levels as well with the frequency that's being put out?
I think so. I It feels like it. One of the things that's different about being on computers or interacting with artificial intelligence, which so many people are fascinated by right now, that's so different in nature is sensual. We are immersing in an experience that appeals to all of our senses. It's very embodied. We smell, we hear, we feel the soft air caress our skin, or maybe the cold air give us goosebumps, but it interacts with us on a physiological level, very sensuously. When we're in front of the computer, I know if I'm writing a story and I get really engaged and I'm on the computer, I can totally lose track of time. I can completely forget about my body, not realize I'm tired, not realize I'm hungry until I get up and collapse. But nature, so what I've found when interacting with AI or the computer is that I end up tired afterwards. When I am out in nature, I leave renewed. I'm filled up and restored.
Do you think that, or is there any evidence that, particularly our younger people, so focused on the handheld stuff and the computers and the cell phones and the tablets, and does that, because they're not engaging their sense of smell, they're not engaging their sensual senses, it's pretty much visual and audio. Is that starting to deteriorate the other senses to where they are kind of lagging behind?
I think, well, absolutely. One thing I think is really atrophied in a lot of modern humans is a sense of smell. And I can smell people in the forest with huge amounts of perfume and laundry detergents for 40 minutes after they walk by, if somebody walks by, and I'm thinking, "How can they be saturated in that much scent? Don't they notice?" And they must not, because nobody would do that if they were smelling it the way I'm smelling it. But my sense of smell has improved from being out in the woods a lot because I wanna smell all these enchanting smells, and they're subtle. Some of them are quite subtle.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can be out in the woods, and if the wind's right, I can smell somebody coming from several miles.
I know, and the animals can,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
disrupts our ability to smell the soil after a rain or the very, delicate fragrances of trillium flowers or even the scent of fresh water.
Mm.
They all have a smell, and we're missing out. So and we're missing out on quiet. So when we're in a forest, not only is it quiet, but then there's the bird songs and there's the way the needles and leaves rustle in the breeze and all these delicate and um, beautiful sounds that lull us and make a music that's quite beautiful that a lot of people will go to a forest and have their headphones on. So they're missing that whole aspect of the sensory experience. And in fact, one of the main techniques of forest bathing is to turn off all the electronic devices.
I can understand how that would be. It's not just the scents that we wear and the stuff in our clothing, but what about the pollution that, if we live inner city, or don't even have to be inside the city anymore, it kind of chases out and uh,
Yeah.
soaks the world around it. So what about the pollution? Is that affecting us?
Well, trees are a big solution to that because of the way they absorb the carbon and put out oxygen. And um, the redwoods can take 400 years to mulch and rot back into the forest floor. So, and during that time, they're habitat for all kinds of salamanders and different creatures. Um, so, yes, on the other hand, the pollution's not good for our trees. It coats their leaves and it makes it harder for the trees to breathe as well. And now with forest fires putting out so much particulate, it's really rather a disaster. We need to restore forests. We need to preserve the ones that we have and plant new trees, not monocultures, but more natural, diversified forests. because our survival is tied with that of the trees.
Well, there was a natural cycle, still is, but it goes along with everything else of a a forest will burn, catch fire, and it renews itself by doing so. Um,
Mhm.
However, the fact that we're also harvesting trees, what kind of impact is that having?
Well, we've taken too many. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I mean, we're creatures, we want to survive, we need homes, and wood makes beautiful homes, beautiful furniture. The problem is there's only at the most 5% of the old growth redwoods left. That's
Mm.
it. So it's just a matter of amounts.
And we're kind of behind the power curve at this point, aren't we?
Yeah, it's time to restore. It's time to preserve and restore and replant and thin forests in ways that don't harm them.
Could we cultivate our own in addition to what needs to be there just to restore?
Yeah, I think so. And Diana Beresford Kroger, who's such a tree expert, she's wonderful, and wrote another book to speak for the trees. But her plan is that if everyone would plant one tree a year and tend that tree, we could completely transform and heal our world. And it's difficult. Not everyone's in a situation where they can plant a tree or has the space to do that. But then there are organizations today, as we speak on Earth Day, Archangel Ancient Tree Archive is planting clones of giant sequoias in downtown Detroit.
Oh my. If there ever were a place that needed it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the you don't, like you say, you don't have to be have a yard. You can go do it somewhere else, right?
Right. Or you can help support organizations that are doing it. There are quite a number. Tree Sisters also plants trees, mostly in more tropical places, but
Yeah, it's amazing how interrelated we are to the trees. Well, it's time for us to take another station break. Ellen and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is forest bathing the same as skinny dipping? This is this is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing forest bathing and its benefits is Ellen D. Davidson. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, I know that we have talked about some about forest bathing, but I think people are still kind of going, what's that look like exactly? What's it look like exactly? So if you were to try to guide someone through forest bathing, it's probably a little more than just walking in the forest. Would you share?
yes, it's definitely more than just walking in the forest. Um, it's being very present and mindful while walking in the forest, or you can practice yoga or sit in the forest. It doesn't necessarily involve walking. It's being in the forest and being aware of being in the forest. And the techniques involve silence. So if practicing with other people, not a lot of talking. The goal is to tune into the environment. Of course, turning off phones, not listening to music because we want to hear the bird song and the wind in the trees. And then just spending a couple hours noticing as much as possible, but in a state that's called soft fascination.
I like that. That's a nice thing to call. What about children? I mean, we've isolated our children into our artificial environment, and thus they remain. So they grow up learning not to look around them. Their peripheral vision has closed in because they're always focusing ahead, whether it's on the teacher or on the computer screen. How can we direct children and guide them through forest bathing?
Nowadays, there's even forest schools that have started up. Some kids get to be educated outdoors. A lot of schools are also starting school gardens,
Hmm.
and the kids get outside and garden. Um, and that's great if there's not access to a forest or a park nearby. The point is, I think what happened too is when I was young, children just played outside all the time, and our parents weren't worried too much that we'd be snatched or anything bad would happen to us. And now, in being more careful because we feel more threatened, understandably, we keep the kids inside the house more. So, making a conscious effort to find outdoor activities that the kids can participate in is really important.
Wouldn't it be great to start a family tradition of once a week, the whole family goes out someplace that's natural in its
Right, and most people do have access at least to a city park that's beautiful and has trees and I do recommend if starting a practice, a nature therapy practice, that people find places as close to home as possible because part of the practice is to return again and again to the same places and establish an intimate relationship.
what does that relationship do? Are we looking at something that's kind of a form of attunement that when you go back, you're automatically conditioned to sink deeper into the environment?
Yes, we get to know it better just the way we would a person. I mean, we can hit it off with all kinds of people, but if we have a good friend, we take the time to really get to know that person in all moods, all weathers, different life events. Well, nature's the same way. There's different seasons. When we know a place, we'll know when the columbines are coming up to bloom, and we'll want to see them every year, or when the berries are ripe. And so I think of the book The Little Prince, that old classic, and how that one rose is so precious to the little prince because he takes care of it. And part of our epidemic of loneliness right now is we've lost the intimacy. We have a bucket list. We want to check off all the places in the world that we're going. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But we should also want to get to really know some places and fall in love and be enchanted with the beauty and magic of the earth.
How much of a distraction is a whole bunch of other people, tourists and whatnot around? How can we move through that distraction in order to connect?
That's hard. I mean, solitude in wild places is a precious thing, and it is becoming fleeting. When I was in high school, there were only like 2.5 billion people on the planet. Now we've got more than 8 billion. That's a lot more people. And we do want people to bond with the earth and get out in nature. I think we should just make more wild places by nature will do that. All we have to do is leave places alone for a while
It's
and make
amazing,
those.
amazing how fast nature will take it back over again, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's what I think. We just need to make this access it should be a human birthright to have
But the,
access to nature.
but the more people that we have, the more places we need to put them, and pretty soon there's this habitat encroachment going on, and we end up in a situation like we are now, possibly even worse. Is there a solution to that?
Well, some cities, Davis in California is an example, have designed communities around parks and open spaces, and that can work. We don't have if again, rapid transit would really help us so that we weren't all driving cars and needing parking lots everywhere we go. That takes up a lot of space. We could design our communities to meet our needs.
There's this line out of an old song. This reminds me of pave paradise and put up a parking lot, right?
Yeah, Joni. I love that song.
Yeah, I do too. What about houseplants? What about bringing nature inside?
Absolutely. Not everyone is able to get outside and not everybody has access, but we can all start deepening our relationship with nature. And that can be as simple as having a plant that it's been shown, it's proven that plants respond to our attention, our love, our care. When we talk to plants, they're aware of it. Their electronic signals change, their music changes. So we can translate the music that plants put out now from the electronic signals.
How is that done? How do they record that? And is it scientifically done, or are we just kind of doing it in our backyard?
No, it's science, and they clip on little electronic sensors onto the leaves of the plants and, pick them up. And this is a personal thing, but I sometimes play the piano and I make stuff up and channel it a little bit. And sometimes after a day in the forest, I come home and I would make up this music. And then we heard some channeled music from the redwoods. And my best friend and my husband were dumbfounded. They both looked at me and they said, "That sounds like what you're playing when you've been there." So this is another example of how we're picking up more than we know we're picking up.
So you're bringing home the attunement, if you will,
Yeah.
or the resonance, and putting that to music.
Yeah.
They did that eons ago, like Vivaldi's Four Seasons. They'd go out in nature, be inspired, and then come back and make a beautiful composition. And they have a quality that just regular composition does not, that's lasted over the ages. I can certainly see what you're talking about there. So,
Yeah.
um, what is nature intelligence?
That's a really good question. It's the way it's so intricately interrelated, and that shows so much intelligence. One example is the salmon swim up the river of their birth to spawn, and after they lay their eggs, they die, and then they leave nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen that the trees need. And then the trees grow and benefit from that and create shade for the deep pools the salmon need. And I think the intelligence of nature is all about the relationships. They're so the relationships are intricate and diverse.
Do you think that by observing those, there's lessons to be learned?
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I think we could save ourselves by biomimicry is becoming a bigger thing where we can copy how nature does things. And the more we learn, the more we can see the elegance of the natural designs.
I know that one of the things is in home design. It used to be people were smart when we were first colonizing, and they'd build the houses in such a way to take advantage of solar gain because heating was not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And but that we've gotten away from that. Now we position the house in the way that there's the best view, have huge picture windows, right, looking out on the
Mhm.
view, and it's in the west. So the house heats up and you have to cool the house. Okay. Um, how much can observing nature and how can we observe nature and design our habitat around it?
I don't know, it's probably infinite, but I do know that in cities like Baltimore, they did studies and discovered that planting trees cools the temperature in the summer by 10 degrees.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it really lessens the amount of energy we need for air conditioning and probably saves lives and also keeps the homes warmer in the winter in the shelter of the trees. So,
Yeah, it's the shelter is an amazing thing too, isn't it? They break the wind and you know
right.
create a beautiful little space to be where it's more peaceful. Um, why do you think trees and whales are calling us?
Well, I'm pretty imaginative. So, but I'll share. So I was in Hawaii and I was swimming with the whales and they sing. So I'm floating around with all those beautiful varied whale tones. And then I had a dream. It was another one of those dreams. I had a dream that this tree I know well here that I've named ancestor tree was calling me to come bring the whale songs and energy back to the tree. And I thought, well, that's odd, but okay, I'll go see what happens. So my friend and I went when I got back to the tree, and we felt like this energy was flowing through us and that it was going right into the electromagnetic uh, lines, like acupuncture points on a grid or something in the earth. And it just felt, the tree felt really satisfied after. And that's very anthropomorphic. It's not science. But I feel like the redwood trees, the old trees all around the planet, probably not just redwood trees, and the whales are both working with the uh, electromagnetic lines that crisscross the earth, and that they have some relationship.
How did you bring the sound of the whale to the tree?
Oh, well, it was so fresh in me. I did sing a little bit and dance. Like, I've seen those beautiful Hawaiian hula dancers that look like goddesses rising from the sea and move just like the waves. So, I did my imitation, which was quite clumsy, but I was feeling it and was sort of making some of those whale sounds when I was there.
So, once again, resonance. Well, it's that time. Please stay with us as Ellen and I continue to explore the power of the natural world. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Can nature cure what ails you? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Ellen D. Davidson. Her website, ellenddavidson.com. Ellen, in your bio, you mentioned several diseases or chronic conditions that you feel that walking in the forest with nature healed. Would you tell us that story, please?
Sure. And it's not just me. The Japanese have proven that forest bathing lowers blood pressure, improves mood, alleviates depression, boosts immune system, lowers stress hormones like cortisol, speeds wound healing, and uh, all kinds of helps kids with ADHD. So that's a reason to take the family to the woods at least once a month. And I think it makes your hair grow. I'm 70 and my hair has never been thicker. And since I started forest bathing, my hair just went nuts. It just came in. So there's all kinds of benefits. It's good for your skin. Uh, Anything related to stress is helped by being in the forest.
Well, you mentioned fibromyalgia and basic things. How can you be sure, or have there been studies that indicate that indeed it was your forest bathing that made the difference for you there?
I know it was because of, my experience. I'd had it for a while. My first daughter was really colicky, and she never slept, and it was just such a stressful experience for me that I lost the ability to sleep, and that started a cascade of symptoms, um, including the muscle spasms, and then the exhausted chronic fatigue, and then I caught millions of colds, and I had tried everything by that point. I'd done acupuncture, hypnosis, counseling. I even went to a psychiatrist. I tried some medications which didn't agree with me, and nothing worked. I just could never sleep. And then it got so bad that I started using tranquilizers a couple times a week just so I'd get some sleep. And that went on for a while until my youngest daughter went to the hospital with a ruptured appendix for 10 days. And I was so stressed out because she was life and death that
Oh,
I was taking
awful.
them every day. By the end of that 2 weeks, I was addicted. And I couldn't believe that I had become addicted to a drug, but so it was. And then kind of in despair, and also just because the Tibetan Buddhist Vajrayana Lama that we were meditating with oh, I tried meditation, suggested that we follow the Jews, and it coincided with my youngest daughter heading off to college, so I had a little more time than usual.
I'm
So I
sorry,
started
follow the what?
my youngest daughter went to
No,
college.
no, before that, you said he suggested you follow the
Oh, follow the Jews. And what he
Jews?
meant by that was what gave us energy, what filled us up with joy. And nobody had ever suggested that I do what I wanted before or given me that sort of permission. But then I started playing a game with myself on free days, and I would wake up and think, what do I want to do? And every time it was go to the forest. And then when I actually started going to the forest, it worked better than the tranquilizers ever had. And I started feeling happier and calmer and more peaceful and couldn't wait to wake up in the morning because I was going to get to go to the forest and maybe see the river otters. And it was just so magical that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that's what healed me. I don't have those symptoms at all anymore.
So, how long did it take of walking in the forest before you started noticing a difference physically?
I felt better after the first day, but it just kept building with the practice. And slowly the symptoms started to fade. I think, oh, I slept great last night, or oh, my neck, I can turn my neck. How wonderful. And then it wouldn't come back. I didn't, and it wasn't placebo effect because I kept expecting all these horrible things to come back because by then I'd had them for quite a long time. So I was just, waiting for the pain to come back and it didn't.
Usually, when we're kind of anticipating it, we almost create it. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about spending time in the forest and how can that aid a person's evolution, if you will? How can it help us as a species move forward versus fall underneath our garbage, literally?
Hmm. That's a great question. Thanks, Gwilda, for bringing that one up. Well, I'm going to go back to soft fascination. And that is a state of consciousness where we're very present and we're very aware with open attention, but we're not sharply focusing. We're not trying to think of answers. It's a very creative state of mind. A lot of famous scientists have made their inventions in that state of mind. Artists come up with great ideas. So, in that sense, just being in the forest in the altered state of consciousness that organically arises for people is going to give us solutions and answers that we might not think of if we stayed in the boxes of our four walls and our ceiling and at home.
Do you think that there's also a resonance that's being provided that stimulates? I'm having trouble putting this into words. That helps us to realign with the way life works in such a way that these solutions just kind of organically come forth.
Yes. And actually, I think they might be solutions being given to us by nature too, because nature's intelligence, we're part of nature. And we're not listening very well to the larger whole. We've given ourselves the most important place and think we have to solve everything just from within our human minds, not even our whole bodies. So, being immersed in nature helps connect us to the entangled web of life. And that is an intelligent web that we're going to find solutions from being part of and being receptive.
I'm glad you brought up the mind because we're pretty top heavy, and and when we're trying to figure something out up here, are we missing? What are we missing when we're trying to do it all in our head?
Well, we're missing the body intelligence, our own body intelligence. And they've proven that our guts are intelligent, the gut brain, and our hearts are intelligent. So we want to integrate the knowing that we receive on multiple levels. The mind, I think, evolved to be a tool. It, I think we overemphasized that quality, which is wonderful, but it's not holistic. It's not using everything we have.
You mentioned, the intelligence of the mind, the intelligence of the heart, the intelligence of the gut. If we aren't body centered, do you think that there's resonances out there that we're absolutely missing?
Um, I don't know if it's possible to totally miss anything because our bodies are still picking up on things, but it doesn't come to consciousness. We're not settled enough. We're like streams of water that are all churned up and turbid, and we're frantically seeking answers to our problems, and we're not taking the time to let all that turbidity settle so things become clear. And being in nature does that effortlessly. We don't even have to try. Beauty. Beauty lures us outside of ourselves into states of gratitude and awe and wonder. And those are higher states of consciousness. We're going to expand our perspective and our perception when we're in those states, and new ideas, fresh ideas come.
What you mentioned were heart centered experiences, weren't they?
Yes, yes. And everybody knows when they see the most beautiful sunset of their lives, or a wild animal, the otters frolicking in the creek. We all know that those are exalted moments where we pause, we stop for a moment, and we really become present.
And that's the other question I had for you is I've they have all these lovely ocean sounds to sleep by and the sounds of nature and running water and falling rain and it goes on and on. But when I play one of those, it's like it just doesn't do it. What's going on there? Do we have to be in the moment versus something that's been recorded?
I don't know. That's also a fascinating question. They have done studies on birdsong, and birdsong is really good for us. It also lowers cortisol and stress hormones and boosts moods and immune systems. And they found it works even with a recording. And now some musicians are incorporating the sounds of birds into their compositions. So I think it still benefits you when you listen to those recorded sounds. But nothing's gonna be as good as the full sensual immersion of going on a camping trip or sleeping out under the stars. That's just better. It's quantum.
So maybe that's why I'm left cold is because I kind of live in nature.
Right, compared
Yeah.
to what you already have.
So Evelyn, it's that time in the show when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
Oh, boy. Um, I guess if I have a mission, it would be to say that if we tune into nature and allow nature to be our guide, then miracles of restoration and healing on this earth beyond our wildest imaginings will happen.
How long do you see that taking, and how many people do you think need to do it before it really engages?
Well, it's already happening. I read a children's book called The Miracle Forest, and it tells the true story of a community in Colombia that was sustainable, but they couldn't get anything to grow. And they finally got tropical Caribbean pine trees to grow. Shaded in the understory of those trees, rainforests not biologists think not seen for 30,000 years, spontaneously came back, bringing over 260 species of flora and fauna back. And now they're continuing to plant. They've already planted over 8 million trees and restore the forest comes back. They
True
didn't plan
magic.
on that. Right.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Ellen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful.
Our guest this hour has been Ellen D. Davidson, the author of Sacred Forest Bathing, The Healing Power of Ancient Trees and Wild Places. To find out more about Ellen, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, ellenddavidson.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to visit past archived episodes, visit missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us again right here on the Voice of Canada Broadcast Network, vocbn.ca, where this mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.